What if I told you that the biggest financial lie ever told is this: work hard and you'll become rich? Now, don't get me wrong, hard work matters. But if hard work alone created wealth, construction workers would be billionaires. Farmers would own private jets. And the people working double shifts every week would be the richest people on earth. Yet that's not what we see. Instead, year after year, the same pattern repeats itself. The rich get richer. The poor struggle to catch up. And the middle class works harder than ever just to maintain the same lifestyle. So what's really happening? Is the system unfair? Are wealthy people simply luckier? Or is there a hidden rule of money that most people never learn? Imagine two people, both earn the same income, both start with the same opportunities. 30 years later, one owns businesses, stocks, and properties. The other is still living paycheck to paycheck. What created such a massive gap? The answer isn't what most people think, because wealth isn't primarily created by work, it's created by ownership. And once you understand that difference, you'll start seeing money through an entirely different lens. Class, gather around the whiteboard. Today, we're solving one of the biggest mysteries in economics. Why do rich people keep getting richer? At first glance, the answer seems obvious. They have more money, but that explanation is too simple, because money itself isn't the secret. The real secret is how money behaves once a person understands the game. Think of wealth like a tree. Most people spend their lives collecting fruit. They work for income. They spend income. Then they start over. But wealthy people focus on owning the tree. While everyone else fights over fruit, they acquire the assets producing it. This difference sounds small, but over decades creates an enormous gap. Today, according to various global wealth reports, the wealthiest 10% own the majority of the world's assets. And every year, that concentration tends to increase. Why? Because money follows certain laws that operate whether you understand them or not. And the first law begins with a simple but powerful comment.
The difference between working for money and having money work for you. But to understand that, we need to travel back hundreds of years, back to a time before stock markets, before billionaires, and before modern capitalism, because that's where the story truly begins. The first wealth machine. Here's a question. What was the greatest invention for creating wealth? Most people would say the internet. Others would say computers. Some might say artificial intelligence. They're all wrong. The greatest wealth machine ever invented was ownership. Imagine two villagers, hundreds of years ago. One spends every day catching fish. The other spends weeks building fishing nets. At first, the fisherman earns more. While he's catching fish, the net builder seems unproductive. People laugh at him. They think he's wasting time. But eventually, the net is finished. Now something incredible happens. The net catches fish whether its owner is actively working or not. Suddenly, one person is producing more with less effort. This is where wealth begins. Not with labor, but with leverage. Throughout history, wealthy people accumulated assets that produced value. Land, factories, businesses, patents, stocks, real estate. These assets became wealth-generating machines. And unlike human labor, machines don't get tired. They don't need weekends. They don't ask for raises. They simply continue producing. This explains why a business owner can earn more than hundreds of employees combined. It's not because they work hundreds of times harder. It's because they own the system producing the value. And here's where things become interesting. Once someone owns one asset, they can use the profits to buy another, then another, then another. Eventually, the assets start buying assets. At that point, wealth takes on a life of its own. But ownership alone doesn't explain why fortunes can grow into billions. There's another force at work. A force so powerful that it can turn a modest investment into a fortune. And it's probably the closest thing money has to magic. Compounding. The snowball effect. Imagine standing on top of a snowy mountain. You make a small snowball and roll it downhill. At first, almost nothing happens. The growth is slow, boring, unimpressive. But then the snowball gets bigger and bigger. Soon, it's collecting snow faster than ever before. Eventually, it becomes enormous. This is exactly how wealth grows. Most people think money grows in a straight line, but wealth grows exponentially. That's why the first million is often the hardest. Not because making money is impossible, but because the snowball is still small. Once wealth reaches a certain size, growth accelerates dramatically. A person with $10,000 invested at 10% earns $1,000. A person with $1 million invested at 10% earns $100,000. Both earn the same percentage, yet one gained an entire year's salary for many workers. This is why rich people often appear to be getting richer effortlessly. Their capital is producing more capital. And that new capital is producing even more capital. It's a cycle that feeds itself. This principle explains why many of the world's largest fortunes expanded rapidly after reaching a critical point, not because their owners suddenly became smarter, but because compounding started working at scale. And here's the part most people miss. Time matters more than income. Someone who starts investing early often beats someone earning far more but starting later, because compounding rewards patience. Yet, even compounding isn't the biggest advantage wealthy people have, because money alone doesn't create fortunes. Information does. And the people who control information often control opportunity. But how exactly does information become wealth? The answer reveals one of the most powerful advantages in the modern world. The information advantage. Here's a question that should make you uncomfortable. If two people have access to the same opportunities, why does one consistently build wealth while the other doesn't? The answer often comes down to information. Not secret information, not illegal information. Useful information. Actionable information. Information that allows someone to see opportunities before everyone else notices them. Imagine you're standing in a crowded city. A massive wave is approaching. One person sees it coming from miles away. Everyone else notices it only when the water reaches their feet. Who has the advantage? Throughout history, fortunes have been built by recognizing trends early. The Industrial Revolution, the railroad boom, the automobile industry, the internet, smartphones, artificial intelligence. Every generation creates new wealth machines. And every generation rewards the people who identify them first. Most people react to change. The wealthy often position themselves before change arrives. Think about it. When a new technology becomes obvious, the biggest gains have usually already been made. When everyone starts talking about an opportunity, the earliest investors are often already profiting. This is why wealthy individuals spend enormous amounts of time learning, reading, researching, networking, studying industries, analyzing trends. Because knowledge isn't just power, knowledge is leverage. But information alone doesn't create wealth. Millions of people know what they should do financially. They know they should invest. They know they should save. They know they should think long term. Yet most never do. Why? Because the greatest obstacle to wealth isn't a lack of information. It's human psychology. And that's where the real story begins. Because the biggest battle in wealth creation doesn't happen in the stock market. It happens inside your own mind. The rich aren't playing the same game. This is the twist that changes everything. Most people think the rich have more money. In reality, the rich often have a different relationship with money altogether. The average person sees money as something to spend. The wealthy often see money as something to deploy. To most people, a paycheck is a reward. To wealthy individuals, capital is a tool. A worker earns money and asks, "What can I buy?" One person purchases liabilities. The other acquires assets. One consumes. The other compounds. One focuses on today's comfort. The other focuses on tomorrow's freedom. And here's the most surprising part. Many wealthy people don't become rich because they make extraordinary amounts of money. They become rich because they consistently direct money into productive assets. Small decisions repeated over decades create massive results. This is why wealth often looks sudden from the outside. People see the mansion, the luxury car, the successful business, the investment portfolio. But they don't see the 20 years of disciplined decisions that came before it. They don't see the sacrifices, the patience, the delayed gratification, the countless times someone chose long-term growth over short-term pleasure.
The public sees the harvest. They rarely see the planting. And that's why wealth appears mysterious. But once you understand the process, the mystery disappears. Which leads us to the most important lesson of this entire documentary. Key insight. Wealth is a system, not an event. Most people spend their lives searching for a breakthrough, a lucky opportunity, a winning lottery ticket, a perfect investment, a magical shortcut. But wealth is rarely built through a single event. It's built through systems. Imagine two airplanes leaving the same airport. One changes its direction by just 1 degree. At first, the difference is invisible, but after thousands of miles, the planes end up on completely different continents. Financial habits work the same way. A small amount invested consistently, a commitment to learning, ownership instead of consumption, patience instead of impulse. Over years and decades, these tiny decisions create enormous gaps.
This is why the rich get richer. Not because every wealthy person is smarter. Not because every wealthy person is luckier. But because many wealthy people participate in systems that continuously generate value. They own businesses. They own investments. They own assets. And those assets continue working whether they're awake or asleep. Meanwhile, most people remain trapped in systems that require constant labor. One system multiplies effort. The other system replaces effort. And understanding that difference may be one of the most valuable financial lessons you'll ever learn. Conclusion. So let's return to the question we asked at the beginning. Why do rich people get richer? The answer isn't hidden in a conspiracy. It's hidden in a principle. Ownership, compounding, information, psychology, systems. These forces work together like gears inside a machine. And once the machine starts moving, it becomes incredibly powerful. The wealthy aren't simply earning money. They're often accumulating assets that generate more assets. They're benefiting from time, from leverage, from compounding, from long-term thinking. Meanwhile, many people remain focused on the next paycheck, the next bill, or the next purchase. And that's understandable. Life is expensive. Responsibilities are real. But understanding the rules of wealth doesn't require being rich. It requires seeing the game clearly. Because once you understand how wealth is actually created, you stop chasing money. You start building systems. You stop asking how to earn more today. You start asking how to create value tomorrow. And that shift in thinking can change everything. Because the goal isn't to work forever. The goal is to build something that works for you. And that's the lesson the wealthy learned long ago. The question is, will you learn it too?
If you enjoyed this documentary and learned something new, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. Because on this channel, we break down the hidden systems behind money, business, psychology, and power. And remember, the biggest financial advantage isn't having more money. It's understanding how money really works. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next lesson.